What's up guys, welcome to a brand new video and technically part 2 of the AMT install on the Z06 here. Last video, if you didn't see it, I'll link it up here, but last video we installed the AMT Vulcan diff mount, or diff mounts better said, for the back of the C6. We actually did order the AMT motor mounts as well, but obviously no engine, no mounts, so they're here just waiting for the motor to get here. But today we are installing the AMT Camber Kit. Now, the reason to kind of go for this kind of setup, especially if you're, kind of debating it, is essentially if you're going to be a very, very aggressive street driver, or most importantly, a track driver. It's going to be predominantly for the track guys. I think if you're just street driving or, cars and coffee and the spirit to drive, you can get away without it. But when you're taking hard corners and you're pulling some G's, this is really going to help keep your alignment in place. Reason being is the stock eccentric cams are round and they're inside of basically a straight lined area that they're kind of pinned against with the bolt's torque. What ends up happening is with under extreme load, they can actually rotate. If they rotate, that is going to shift where your control arm is positioned, which is going to throw off your vehicle and obviously can cause damage and obviously cause you to lose however pace or however you're driving. So it's not safe to kind of have that. So this is in an octagon shape, so it locks into place and increases that or decreases the liability of that occurring dramatically. And then last but not least, it does, because of the way that it's designed, it does give a little bit more from that control arm adjustment to get a little bit more negative camber out of it outside of the stock settings. Can you get away with the track driving vehicle and have the stock setup? Absolutely. I originally was going to just go get a track alignment on the stock setup, but I didn't want to worry. I'm already here. Didn't want to worry about that condition of, hey, if I start picking up some pace, will I potentially shift that, it course correct my car, and I do something incorrectly? So let's jump into it. Let's get them installed. They're relatively quick to install, and they're very detailed. So let's jump into how to get this installed. As you can see down here, everything's broken out, labeled perfectly to ensure that you put it exactly how it goes. Now those are all the shims that are going to go for the upper control arm for more adjustability. And then this is actually a stud kit for the upper control arms. Now you can buy the camber kit separate from this. I bought both kits. We'll go into that in a second, but the camber kit is specifically labeled. As you can see here, I have driver side camber kit with everything in it and the passenger side camber kit. The rear, you only have adjustment on one side of the lower control arm. So as you can see here, I actually added those Z01 tie down spots there. I actually had added that before installing the camber kit, and I was kind of concerned that I wasted time and energy on that. But fortunately, I don't have to touch that bolt. I have to only adjust the one closest to the front of the vehicle. So we do have to loosen that bolt on both sides. I'm going to slide a jack underneath it because obviously when you pull the bolt out, the control arm can shift a little bit and it'll just kind of make it a little bit of a pain for the bolt to go back in. So I'm going to put something under it here to support it and get that in, and I'll show you exactly how the bolt goes placed back in its position once the new cam bolts in. So you can see right here is that eccentric cam we're going to be replacing with this really sexy AMT one right here. Now, when we do this, there is your kits that are labeled either driver or passenger. Now we are on the passenger side, so I've already grabbed the wrong bag, but I have the bag open. It's right here, passenger kit. Now when you have the kit, you have 2 blues, 1 red. The front of the car has 2 adjustment screws. So essentially, the front of the control arm, both sides of the lower control arm require adjustment. 2 blues. The rear of the car only adjusts on that side with less adjustability. There's only 1 color red. So through due process elimination, red is what goes in the rear. This also will indicate where these dials go. So if you could see here, you see back and you see P. P is for passenger, B is for back of car, and then you have this one, which will say front of car. So this one will go on that side, and this one will be on this side. Now, this car is going essentially, once the engine's in, straight to an alignment shop. I'm not driving this car with whatever alignment specs I'm putting, which means two things for me. I am not too crazy about dialing in alignment myself. I am going to pay a professional to dial that in. But with that being said, that doesn't mean I'm going to be reckless with it. And what I'm going to do is once I back out this nut, I'm essentially going to put this one in that same dial spot, get the marking number, and try to set it so it keeps a very similar camber setup that it has, or alignment spec that it has now. So I believe the bolts either are 20 or 21. Let's go ahead and work on backing those out. I know they're torqued pretty tight, so we're going to need to use a little bit of muscle. No. This is kind of danced around a little bit. I'm still going to use the bolt to determine where it needs to be. And I'm going to leave it on street right now. And essentially it needs to be on 3. We got the jack under it. I can't see diddly squat. Try to back that bolt out. Oh, and there goes one side. Oh, it's that dust from the time I went off track. Now, we get to slide this guy in, and we have it on track. I'm just going to slide it in the slot. I'm not going to worry about it right now. And then slide this side in, track, and then going for 3, which would put me right about here. So we've got the camber kit done on both sides, and naturally you would just move over to the front or vice versa. Camber kit's really easy to install. I already have the wheels off on this side, so I'm going to finish up with upper control arm stud kit. I don't believe you have to buy this with the kit. I think you buy this separate. So essentially here are 2 upper control arm bolts, or sorry, are 4 upper control arm bolts bolt into the frame. But over time, as you go aligning the car and adjusting and adjusting and adjusting, you tend to wear that insert where it bolts into. So what we do with the stud kit is essentially just have the bolt locked in place, and then you adjust from the opposite side, not wearing that insert out. So I'm going to go get these installed. Essentially, I just got to back those out, support the upper control arm because it will drop at that point, and put the studs in, Loctite them, and then add some shims. But of course, I'll leave that to the professionals. I'm just going to kind of get it placed so I could put my wheel back on safely. Here's the factory bolt. It's not really focusing on my hand at the moment. Oh, wait, that's because I have the focus locked. So here's a factory bolt, and here is the stud. It says it's plenty long. It's probably a little bit longer, and that's fine. You can kind of see it there. So it does have a 7mm hex on this side. So you just got to screw it in, mock where you want it, and then you can back it back out and put the Loctite on it. Siri, set a 10-minute timer.
10 minutes.
While those studs taking, man, look, I'm wearing Daisy Dukes out here. while those listen to me, while those shorts, while those studs take a few more minutes to dry and we move through this process, I do want to give a shout out to AMTs. We're not sponsored at all, no communication back and forth yet, but Mark Petronas is extremely insightful. He's an active racer, so you're not buying a product for someone that builds race products but doesn't actually use them on his own applications. I have on this car already the AMT Camber Kit, AMT Stud Kit, the AMT Vulcan Diff Mount, AMT Engine Mounts, and the AMT Ultra Low Seat Brackets. Essentially because his products are quality from start to finish. There's no product that you receive that you're not thoroughly impressed by their creations, and they're tested and proven. So if you guys are getting into tracking or just want to, make your Corvette a bit more sporty, a bit more darty, these kind of upgrades, AMT is the place to go. Even if you don't track race your car, you can still use the more solid motor mount. You could use the solid diff mounts. You could take advantage of the camber kit and stuff like that if you're going to be doing some spirited driving. So all their products are extremely high quality. I highly recommend anyone who's not aware of AMT and owns, I believe, C5, C6, all the way up to the C8 generation Corvette to look into their products for sure. Now let's get back into finishing up this side. We'll replicate the process on that side, and then we'll finally get... And just like that, this side is completely done. We have the stud kit in, and we have the camber kit in, so the rear side is done. Essentially, you're just going to do this 3 more times. You got to do the studs, and then on the front, which we'll show in a second, you do have multiple camber adjustments on both sides of the lower control arm, whereas the rear, you only have it on one side of the control arm. So it's just essentially the same process as here, just with one extra step, which is adding the camber kit to the other side of the control arm. So let's jump into I'm going to wrap up the rear, put the wheels back on, and then we're moving on to the front side of the car. It's very similar to the rear side, with the exception of obviously it's the front, and that there's actually 2 adjustment points on the control arm. So in the rear, when we did it, we only had to back out 1 screw on the lower control arm. On the front, we will be doing it on the front and back side of the lower control arm. We also have the stud kit to install on this side, but that'll follow a very similar cadence to what you saw on the back. So whatever you saw on the back of the car, just follow the same in the front. We'll take this wheel off real quick. We'll show you guys the 2 front eccentric cams on this one. We'll remove them and replace them with the AMT ones, and then we'll wrap this video up. Let's go ahead and pull this thing apart. All right, so before we start, I don't know if you guys noticed essentially on the other side, I don't know if I recorded it or not, but we are swapping these out. Has nothing to do with a camber kit install, but these are the factory rotors, which are known to crack under extreme pressure. Essentially GM on these vanes here, put them backwards so it doesn't cool properly. So I have the DBA 4000 series is slotted. I've already swapped out the rear ones, and I'm just, before I get into the car, see how disgusting these look, and can't wait to put the new rotors on. It's definitely going to withstand a bit more beating and also just look way better than these disgusting old bags. So we'll get to that in a moment, but let's figure out these center cams. I have bolt number 1 over here, and then we have bolt number 2 on the opposite side. And then, like I said, these are all labeled. It's not going to focus because I have my camera focusing on those bolts, but there it is, passenger kit. I have a light right here, that's why it's blinding. And passenger front. So these are the ones we're going to use right here. Let's go ahead and start loosening it. Same setup. I mean, these 2 jack stands are just kind of floating here, so I'll more than likely use that just to not let the control arm drop, but I also have a bottle jack to slide under it because I don't know if these jack stands have any more height out of them while they're on the quick jacks. So I'm going to put that there and start unbolting. less than ideal now. All right, so now that the camber kit is done, we can move on to the studs up here, which are those same 4 bolts we did in the rear. Not going to record that because it's the same exact process as the rear. So essentially, loosen those 4 bolts, put something to support this big old guy from falling. You're going to put those bolts in, screw them, mark where you want them, pull them back out, Loctite, screw them back in, give them 10 minutes, let them nice and dry, and then you can put the control arm back on and bolt them in.